Oh, Matt, this is just a delicious news cycle. Thank you so much for being on the show. We always book our guests ahead of time, and sometimes we hope there's like some really good news and something juicy and red meaty to talk about in the morning. Our cup runneth over, Matt.
The Hank Johnson clip I had not seen before, and I'm watching this thinking like, this guy definitely doesn't think OJ did it. You know, I mean, it was planted. It was planted at Joe Biden's garage. I'll be honest with you, Benny. Back in September, when the left was trying to make us look like a third world country by enveloping us in this, archivist dispute with Donald Trump, I thought, don't we have better things to be talking about than this? And isn't this pretty embarrassing for our country? So like, I'm not like the hottest under the collar over the notion that probably every single library in the country of a former president or vice president is out of some sort of technical compliance with the Records Act or the Archivist Act. And in a way, this is probably the best scandal Joe Biden could be in, because it allows Merrick Garland to appoint this special counsel. It resolves that we're not going to go after Joe Biden or Donald Trump over an archivist matter. And now we're talking about this instead of the fact that purchasing power for our Americans is being depleted. We've got a debt limit vote coming up where already Republicans and Democrats are working together on the Hill so that we don't have to cut spending. The border is a disaster. And, so the double standard was like fully on display. And I guess what you got to ask yourself is, if you're one of the people in the White House that knew this for months, you had to have some level of depravity to watch congressional Democrats just like swallow the hook over and over and over on the Trump thing, because they knew that Biden had the same problem, and they allowed, the like Jamie Raskins of the world to go out there and act like it was the greatest scandal on the planet Earth that President Trump had taken some documents that, there's, I guess, factual dispute about whether or not he declassified back to Mar-a-Lago. So I don't know. That was an embarrassing display for the White House press secretary, but largely because they set themselves up to face the hypocrisy charge.
I mean, my contention is that this is just lawfare, that this is just espionage, and they're just trying to push Joe Biden out. Joe Biden has worn out his usefulness, and they are attempting to get him to not run in 2024. And they are just simply going to leverage by 1,000 cuts to say, you better stop it, pal.
That's an interesting theory, because a lot of people in Biden world are feeling more bullish than they had in the past. They've got Mitch McConnell. Maybe Mitch McConnell will be the running mate. They're out there, maybe they get rid of Kamala, and it's like,
why not?
Biden and Mitch running around like cutting ribbons on bridges. So they believe that Biden has an ability to kind of move to the center. You saw that with him at least going to the border, and you saw all of the La Raza crowd and the real radical pro-illegal immigration activists go nuts over the fact that Biden wasn't down there spinning the turnstile. And maybe it's attack to the center. And who would set him up then? Would it be like the K-Hive under your theory?
So, in my theory, that they need to clear the field for someone else. Is it going to be Michelle Obama? Is it going to be Gavin Newsom? That they're very worried about 2024, and they know that they used every tool in their capacity to stave off the red wave that should have happened in 22. And if we'd had competent Republican leadership, it would have happened in 2022. And that's something I want to touch on in just a moment.
Yeah. I don't give the Dems all the credit for that. I don't give them the credit for that. We had so many self-inflicted wounds. Yes. The Democrats did everything they possibly could do to give this last election to us. They crashed the economy, and they were doing like unspeakably weird things in schools and in corporate boardrooms, like all over, as people couldn't afford gas or eggs. And yet we had a circular firing squad. And that's why like this deal that we got with Speaker McCarthy is so important, because people like Caroline Leavitt, who had a primary in September, faced millions of dollars in special interest attacks from Republicans. She wins the nomination, but then is unable to reconstitute the Republican base to get into Congress. Joe Kent, an August primary, goes and wins, but against a whole lot of establishment money. And then he fell, just a hair short. And those two races alone would increase our, 4-vote margin by 50% if we just made some strong choices there. So I think that we need a better focus as Republicans. And I think this deal that we got with McCarthy allows the policy matters like balanced budgets, the border, ending the COVID national emergency, term limits to rise to the top of the discussion. And it defangs some of the worst elements of the establishment that would hunt populists that would otherwise be energetic representatives.
So let's return to I'll return to oversight in just a moment. But since we're talking about the speaker's race, and since that just wrapped up in the small hours of the evening last Saturday, it hasn't even been a week. We got to touch on this because this is the most viral and contentious and fascinating speaker's race in American history, inarguably. A couple things here. One, could it have been settled better in the octagon with you and with Representative Rogers? I don't know.
No, I am a lover, not a fighter. So I have no interest in physical violence. Look, what's crazy about all that is that like that's how friends and colleagues can sometimes even feel like comfortable enough with somebody to, get in your face or let you know how they're thinking. But because of the limited camera angles that are allowed, that stuff goes on and you never see it. So it wasn't like a unique dynamic on the floor. It was just
Interesting.
unique that the American people got to watch. And that's why now I've introduced an amendment to the rules so that we can go back and allow those cameras to capture all of those moments, right? I mean, there was a moment where I was talking to Pramila Jayapal. So the press got all excited and people were asking, well, what were the two of you talking about? And we were talking about different things we could work on legislatively to break up big tech. And I think that if we had more of that access, you would see moments from that speaker's battle emerge in legislative context.
What were you speaking with AOC about? Gas stoves?
I was talking to AOC about how many Democrats were going to be there for the next vote, because my point of leverage was that the batch of Republicans who were not going to support Kevin McCarthy at the time, what was sufficient. It was a critical mass given the requirement that the speaker have 50% plus one. There was some concern, and sometimes there were some rumors put out that the Democrats would functionally drain the denominator if 20 or 30 or 50 of them didn't come and vote, and that would have changed the decision calculus for the moves that we made. So I was checking in with AOC to make sure that all of them were going to be there in their seats, and she worked to ensure that was the case.
Okay. So many viral moments. It was actually hard to keep up, especially for my team, which posits itself as the best viral repository for moments like this.
You are.
Can you please explain what it was that finally flipped in the 15th vote?
Well, we got assurances that the rules were going to pass. You see, during the 14th vote, one of the members of Congress on the Republican side tweeted out that he wasn't going to vote for these rules that we had negotiated so hard for, and that had the accountability measures to ensure that all of the commitments, from the policy commitments to the personnel commitments to the procedural commitments to even the commitments on things like releasing the 14,000 hours of January 6th footage, all of those had to be enforced by mechanisms that were in the rules. And so I didn't want to fall for a pig in a poke where McCarthy ascended to the speakership, and then the rules that we had worked so hard went down in the very next vote. So it took just one extra round to get the ink dry and ensure that we all were in the same canoe. And now, I mean, the speaker is stronger than I think he ever would have been otherwise, because he could, when he goes and meets with Mitch McConnell, he could say, look, you better not send me some big omnibus piece of spending legislation that's thousands of pages that you want me to jam through in a day. The House rules don't allow it. We have a 72-hour rule to read the legislation. Everything has to comport to a single subject. Amendments have to be germane. And so we now have rules in place that would never allow that terrible thing that happened to the American people to ever happen again. And that was our organizing principle. I don't think that weakens Speaker McCarthy. I think that strengthens his hand with McConnell and Schumer and Biden.
So you and McCarthy are good now? You guys are bros?
Well, I don't know if I'm on his Christmas card list, but I am. He's the speaker. Long live the speaker. And what I've seen during these first few days of his speakership is fulfilling the commitments he made.
Yes.
You know, he has not gone out there and soft pedaled the January 6th release. He reaffirmed that commitment, and that is to his great credit. And as we've seen committees start to get populated, we are starting to see the commitments about having conservative members, Freedom Caucus aligned members in a position to continue to enforce what was required to get our spending and our fiscal house in order. So I'm very encouraged so far.
So you obviously are a complete and total battle axe on these committees. Can you please refresh our audience as to which committees you will be on, and then also your questioning of the FBI, their agents, your take, you going hard in the paint on January 6th. I mean, this stuff, I can tell you this: we track the numbers. This stuff flies. The American people want it. Will they be seeing more of it in 2023?
Yeah, I serve on the Judiciary Committee and the Armed Services Committee. I will continue my service on those committees. I sought no personal position of leadership. I don't expect one because you're right. Where I am best in the game is when I've got the opportunity to ask tough questions to witnesses with follow-ups to show the American people what's really going on. And there are a lot of members of Congress, I love them, who use their 5 minutes to give a 4-minute and 30-second speech and then to ask a little baby question at the end. That's not how I use my time. And so in the Armed Services Committee, I'm going to be working on rooting out this wokeism in our military. As much as there's important work to do to make sure we hold the high ground against China, if we do not recruit the best, brightest, most patriotic Americans to military service, it's not going to matter what weapon systems we have. And if we drive out people who love our country because we institute so many pronoun training courses and we have to do like drag queen story hour on military bases instead of enhancing capabilities, then this is going to be a very different country. And we're not going to be protected, and we're not going to be able to ensure that our culture is sustainable for future generations. So that's going to be my work on armed services. On the Judiciary Committee, we're going to have the Select Committee as a subcommittee housed within Judiciary. We could be doing impeachments. I would not be surprised if there were articles of impeachment against Mayorkas for purposefully turning our border over to the traffickers and the cartels. And that is what is happening. I don't think you impeach people for incompetence. If we did that, probably all we'd be doing. But when it is a purposeful effort to try to degrade our country, I think that the appropriate constitutional check on that is the impeachment power housed in the House of Representatives. So we'll be asking the tough questions there, and we've got to stop this government from being weaponized against our people. I mean, McCarthy did not just talk about that in the generic. When he gave his speech, he singled out the FBI as a political organization that must be checked, and I was thrilled to see him draw such a bead with particularity on that point.
Matt, a bit of a esoteric question as we close here this interview, but I think a very important one. A lot of young men are looking for heroes. A lot of young men are looking for the fight. They're, of course, being emasculated. This is affecting our military, as you just talked about. They are being told that masculinity is a poison, that testosterone is a poison, that standing up for yourself, like you just did, against unspeakable pressures. I mean, the pressures you were under was, unlike virtually anything I've ever seen. You could create a diamond with them. It was, and you stood strong, and you were rock ribbed, and you were brass balled, and you had gunpowder in your gut. And a lot of young men see that, and they're like, I want that. I want to be able to stand strong. I want to be able to have constitution and an iron spine. What's your advice to young men to go live a noble and brave life?
Find a good woman. I'm a way better man because I have a wife, because I am in the type of arrangement that allows you to do your very best, because you have someone right there by your side doing their very best and inspiring you every day. So I think true, sustainable, authentic relationships make us all stronger. And, I knew that whatever happened at work, when I got home, it was going to be my responsibility to do the dishes, take out the trash, and that my wife would pour me a glass of wine or make me a margarita, and we'd watch Hoarders or something. How's that for an ending? My guilty pleasure is watching Hoarders.
It's beautiful, man. It's beautiful. You did take out the trash. You literally took out the trash in our Congress, and we really appreciate that. And thank you, Matt, for fighting.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on.
All right.